This happened back in 2012 when I was 28 and working as a forest ranger in Blackwood National Forest, a dense stretch of pine and cedar in northern Maine. The job was straightforward: patrol trails, check campsites, monitor wildlife, and make sure hikers didn't get lost or start fires. It was peaceful most days, just me, my coworker, Tom, and the endless trees. But one day everything changed, and I still can't shake what happened. Tom was my best friend on the job. He was 32, a wiry guy with a quick laugh and a knack for spotting animal tracks. We'd been rangers together for 3 years, covering the same 50-mile sector of Blackwood. In late October, the forest was quiet. Tourist season was over, and the air had that sharp cold bite. On October 22nd, Tom went out to check a remote trail near Deer Hollow, a rugged area with steep ravines and thick underbrush. He was supposed to radio in by 4:30 p.m. to confirm he was heading back to the ranger station. The call never came by 5:30 p.m. I was worried. Tom was never late. I tried his walkie-talkie, but all I got was static. I reported it to our supervisor, Ellen, who told me to wait until dark before assuming the worst. Maybe his radio died, or he twisted an ankle. But by 7:00 p.m., with no sign of him, Ellen called for a search me. Her and 2 other rangers, Mike and Sarah, grabbed flashlights, maps, and first aid kits and headed to Deer Hollow. The night forest was an inky void, broken only by the crunch of our boots and the occasional hoot of an owl. For hours we called Tom's name, our shouts swallowed by the trees. There was no trace of him. No tracks, no gear, nothing. It was as if the forest had consumed him entirely. For 3 days, a search ensued, involving volunteers, local police, and even a canine unit. We meticulously scoured every trail, inspected ravines, and even dragged a nearby pond, but to no avail. Not a single boot or scrap of clothing was found. Tom was simply gone. The official report listed him as missing, presumed lost. Some theorized he had wandered off and become disoriented, while others whispered about animal attacks or a fatal fall. I remained unconvinced. Tom knew Blackwood better than anyone. He wasn't the type to get lost. Life went on, but it wasn't the same. I kept patrolling, but every step in the forest felt heavier. I'd catch myself glancing over my shoulder, expecting to see Tom's grin or hear his voice on the radio. Then about 2 weeks later, on November 7th, something happened that still gives me chills. It was around 1 noisy madame, and I was alone in the ranger station. A small cabin with a wood stove and a desk cluttered with maps. I was finishing paperwork when my walkie-talkie crackled. At first, it was just static, like a distant storm. Then I heard a voice, faint, panicked, unmistakable. It was Tom. "Help. Someone's chasing me. He's gonna kill me." His words were garbled, broken by static, but the fear in his voice was clear. "I'm in Deer Hollow. Please hurry." Then the line went dead. I froze, my heart pounding. I grabbed the radio and called out to him, but there was no response. I didn't think twice. I called Ellen, who was skeptical, but agreed to organize a search party by 2:30 a.m. Mike, Sarah, and a couple of deputies were back in Deer Hollow. Our flashlights cutting through the fog. The forest felt different that night, like it was watching us. The air was thick, and every snap of a twig made my skin crawl. We followed the trail. Tom had been checking when he vanished about a mile in near a rocky outcrop. I spotted something glinting in the dirt. It was Tom's walkie-talkie, smashed to pieces. The antenna bent and the casing cracked. My stomach dropped. There was no way he'd left it like that on purpose. We searched the area for hours, calling his name, checking every shadow, but there was nothing. No footprints, no blood, no sign of a struggle, just the broken radio. The deputy said it was probably kids messing with us, picking up Tom's radio and playing a prank. But I knew Tom's voice. It was him, and he was terrified. We kept searching for days, but found nothing else. The case went cold again, and people stopped talking about it, but I couldn't let it go. Every night I'd replay his voice in my head, wondering what he'd seen, who was chasing him. I worked in Blackwood for another year, but it was never the same. I'd avoid Deer Hollow when I could, and when I had to go there, I'd feel this heavy dread, like something was waiting. I left the Ranger service in 2013 and moved to a desk job in town. That night haunts my dreams. The static of the radio, Tom's voice, the broken walkie-talkie lying in the dirt. I can't shake the feeling that he didn't just get lost. Something terrible happened to him. It all started on a Saturday night about a year ago. I was 17, and my parents were at a dinner party downtown, leaving just my 9-year-old brother, Josh, and me at home. We live in a quiet neighborhood on the city's edge, where the houses are spaced out and the streetlights offer little illumination. My parents left around 7. After making frozen pizza, Josh and I settled in to watch some cartoon reruns in the living room. Everything felt normal until it wasn't. Around 10:00 p.m., a knock echoed at the door. Not the doorbell, but a soft, persistent thud. I assumed it was a neighbor, or perhaps my parents, who might have forgotten their key. I went to check through the peephole. There was a man standing there. He had a black hoodie on, with the hood up, and he was holding a big brown paper bag like the ones delivery drivers use. He didn't look up. He just stared straight ahead. I didn't open the door. Instead, I asked through the door, "Can I help you?" He looked up. His eyes were kind of dead. No smile, no emotion. He just said, "Food, delivery." We didn't order anything. I said quickly, "It's already paid." He answered. I felt this cold drop in my stomach. Something was off. "Wrong house," I said, trying to sound firm. "We didn't order anything." He stood there a second longer, then turned and walked down the porch steps. He didn't go in a car, just walked down the street and out of view. I stood there frozen for maybe a full minute, then locked the door again, even though it already was, and checked the windows. I told Josh to go upstairs and stay in my room. I didn't want to scare him, so I just said, "I thought I saw someone weird outside." About 10 minutes passed. Then came another knock, but this one was softer, slower, like the person wasn't in a hurry. This time, it was a woman. She looked about 30, blonde hair, messy bun. She was wearing jeans and a light jacket, like she just got off work or something. She was breathing kind of hard, like she had been running. "Hi," she said, smiling weakly through the glass of the side window. "Sorry to bother you. My car broke down a little down the road. My phone's dead. Can I just use yours to call my husband?" She didn't look dangerous. In fact, she looked like the opposite. She looked tired, cold, maybe even scared. But then I noticed something. She kept glancing to her left, not in a normal way. Her eyes would dart. So I stepped to the side and looked through the front curtain out toward the yard. That's when I saw him. The same man from earlier, still in the black hoodie, was now standing at the far end of our yard, behind the tree, motionless, just staring at the house. He wasn't looking at the woman. He was looking at the window. I was behind, like he knew exactly where I was. I didn't open the door. I didn't say a word. I just backed away and ran upstairs. Josh was sitting on my bed with headphones on, watching something on my laptop. I whispered, "Get in the closet now." I didn't explain. I just helped him inside and shut the door. I went into the bathroom with my phone and locked the door behind me. I called 911. The dispatcher asked if they were trying to break in. I said no, not yet. But I told her everything: the fake delivery guy, the woman with the story, and the man now standing in the yard. She said to stay quiet, keep the doors locked, and officers would be there in less than 10 minutes. It was the longest 10 minutes of my life.
And I kept listening. No breaking glass, no sounds at all, just silence. When the police arrived, I heard them yelling outside. I looked from my bedroom window and saw flashlights moving around. The woman was gone, so was the guy in the hoodie. One officer talked to me while another checked the yard and the street.
Apparently we weren't the only ones. Another house about 6 blocks away had a similar thing happen just 20 minutes before us. Same fake food delivery. Same woman asking to use the phone. Only difference that time, someone opened the door. They didn't get hurt, but the house was broken into. The guy rushed in the moment they unlocked it, and the woman tried to hold the door open. The couple inside managed to fight back and call for help, but the 2 suspects ran before the police got there. The cops believed they were trying different houses, looking for people who were home alone, using fake stories to get them to unlock the door. They never caught them, but I think about it a lot. What if I had opened the door? What if Josh had answered it while I was in the bathroom or upstairs? It was the summer of 2018, and my best friend, Jake, and I were desperate for a break. College had been brutal, endless assignments, late-night study sessions, and the constant grind of trying to keep our grades up while working part-time jobs. When Jake found a cheap cabin rental on a lake, just a couple of hours from campus, it felt like a gift from the universe. The listing on Airbnb was basic. A tiny 1-bedroom cabin on Lake Worcester, Oklahoma, with a dock, a fire pit, and a low price because it was a last-minute cancellation. We didn't care that it was bare bones. We just wanted to fish and forget about school for a week. So we split the $200 cost, packed our bags, and hit the road, and Jake's beat-up Honda Civic. The drive was uneventful, just us blasting music and joking about how we'd catch enough fish to never buy groceries again. Lake Worcester was busy this time of year. July meant families, jet skis, and pontoon boats clogging the water. The cabin was tucked away on a quieter part of the lake, down a gravel road lined with pine trees. It was small, maybe 500 square feet, with weathered wood siding and a sagging front porch. The inside smelled like mildew and old wood, but it had a couch, a kitchenette, and a bedroom with 2 twin beds. A sliding glass door led to a back deck that overlooked the lake, and a rickety dock stretched out into the water. Our temporary lakeside retreat, though simple, was perfect for the week. We arrived at noon on the first day, settling in and spending the afternoon fishing from the dock. Jake reeled in a small bass, which we grilled alongside hot dogs for dinner. The lake buzzed with activity, children's shouts, boat engines, and music drifting from nearby cabins. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the water in shades of orange, we relaxed on the deck with a couple of courtiers. It felt like true freedom. However, that night, an unsettling feeling began to creep in. Exhausted from the journey and the sun, we went to bed early, around 10:11 p.m. To combat the stuffiness, we left the sliding glass door ajar for air, ensuring the screen door was locked. I drifted off to sleep to the rhythmic chirping of crickets and the occasional plop of fish in the lake. Sometime after midnight, I was jolted awake by a faint yet distinct rumbling. It sounded like a boat engine idling somewhere close to our cabin. Half asleep, I tried to discern if I was imagining it. While the lake was busy during the day, the presence of a boat at this late hour seemed peculiar.
I sat up in bed and glanced at Jake, who was snoring softly. The room was dark, except for a faint glow coming through the screen door. I got up, my bare feet cold on the wood floor, and crept toward the glass door. The engine noise was clearer now, low and steady, like someone was just sitting out there on the water.
He peered through the screen, my eyes adjusting to the dark. The lake was pitch black, the moon hidden behind clouds, but I could make out the faint outline of our dock. Then I saw it, a beam of light, sharp and white, sweeping across the water. It moved slowly, like someone was holding a flashlight, scanning the shore. It hit our dock, lingered for a moment, then flicked off. My heart started pounding. I told myself it was probably just a late-night fisherman or someone checking their boat. But why the flashlight, and why so close to our dock? I stood there frozen, waiting for the engine to fade away. After a few minutes, it did the sound growing distant until it was gone. I checked the screen door. It was still locked. I crawled back into bed, uneasy, but too tired to overthink it. Maybe it was nothing. The next morning, I woke up to Jake making coffee in the kitchenette. The sun was streaming through the windows and the lake was already buzzing with boats. I told him about the engine noise and the flashlight, but he just shrugged. Probably some drunk guy fishing or messing around. He said, pouring coffee into a chipped mug. People do weird stuff on lakes. At night, I nodded, trying to brush it off. He was probably right. We decided to check out the dock and see if we could spot anything unusual. The morning air was warm and the smell of lake water and pine filled my nose. The dock creaked under our weight. As we walked out to the end, everything looked normal. No signs of anyone messing with it. But when we turned to head back to the cabin, Jake stopped dead in his tracks. "Dude," he said, pointing at the ground near the back door. "What the hell is that? There in the soft dirt, just off the deck, were footprints. They were big, maybe size 11 or 12, and they were caked with mud, like someone had walked straight out of the lake. The print started at the water's edge, went up the slight incline to the deck, and stopped right at the back door. My stomach dropped. I followed the trail with my eyes, trying to make sense of it. The morning sun illuminated the still wet mud, a chilling sight. "Okay, that's creepy," Jake whispered, his voice hushed. "Did you check the door last night?" "Yeah, it was locked," I replied, my mouth suddenly dry. The screen was locked too. We verified both the sliding glass door and the screen. They were indeed locked, with no signs of forced entry. But then I noticed something else. The spare key, which the Airbnb host had left under a flower pot on the deck for emergencies, was gone. I lifted the pot, expecting to find the small silver key where it had been when we arrived. But there was nothing but dirt. Maybe it fell or something, Jake offered, though he sounded unconvinced. We scoured the deck, looking under furniture, and even in the grass surrounding the cabin. No key. I felt a chill despite the July heat. Someone had been here right outside our door while we were sleeping. We tried to shake it off and go about our day. We fished, swam, and even took a walk along the lake's edge to check out the other cabins. Most of them were bigger, with families or groups of friends laughing and grilling. Our little cabin felt isolated in comparison, set back from the main cluster of rentals. I kept glancing at the footprints, which were drying out in the sun by afternoon. They were barely visible, but I couldn't stop thinking about them that night. We were both on edge. We double-checked every lock, front door, back door screen, even the windows. Jake suggested we leave the porch light on, and I agreed. We didn't talk about it much, but I could tell he was as spooked as I was. We stayed up later than the night before, playing cards and trying to act normal. Around 11 p.m., we heard it again. The low rumble of a boat engine. This time Jake heard it too. We froze, listening, As the sound grew closer, then stopped, just like the night before, I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, shining it through the screen door. The beam wasn't strong enough to reach the water, but I could see the dock. Clearly nothing. No light, no movement. The engine idled for a few more seconds, then cut off silence. We waited, barely breathing, but nothing happened. No flashlight, no footsteps. Eventually we went to bed, but I barely slept. Every creak of the cabin made me jump. The next morning, we checked the deck again. No new footprints. No signs of anything disturbed. The spare key was still missing. Jake was starting to get paranoid, talking about how maybe someone was watching the cabin, waiting for us to leave so they could break in. I didn't want to believe it, but the thought was creeping into my head too. We decided to call the Airbnb host, a guy named Mike, who lived about 30 minutes away. He sounded annoyed when we told him about the key and the footprints. Probably just kids messing around. He said happens sometimes on the lake. People get drunk, wander onto other people's docks. I'll bring you a new key tomorrow. His explanation made sense, but it didn't make me feel better. That day, we stuck close to the cabin, keeping an eye on the water. Every boat that passed made my heart race. I started noticing things I hadn't before, like how the trees around the cabin blocked the view from the road, or how there were no security cameras anywhere. The closest neighbor was a good 200 yards away, and their cabin was empty half the time. That night we decided to stay up and keep watch. We turned off all the lights inside so we could see out without being seen. We sat on the couch facing the glass door with a baseball bat Jake had found in the closet. The hours dragged on the lake, quiet, except for the occasional frog or owl around 1 a.m. It happened again, the boat engine. This time it was louder, closer. I gripped the bat, my palms sweaty. Jake leaned forward, squinting into the dark. There he whispered, pointing. A faint light flickered on the water, maybe 50 feet from the dock. It wasn't a flashlight. This time, it looked like the glow of a phone screen reflecting off the lake. It bobbed slightly, like someone was sitting in a boat, looking at their phone. Then it went out, and the engine revved, moving away. We didn't sleep at all that night. By morning, we were exhausted and jumpy. We checked the deck again. No footprints, no missing items. But something felt wrong, like the air itself was heavier. Jake wanted to leave, but I convinced him to stay one more night. We'd paid for the week, and I didn't want to let some creep ruin our trip. Plus, Mike was supposed to bring the new key that afternoon. Mike showed up around 3:00 p.m., a middle-aged guy in a flannel shirt and a baseball cap. He handed us a new key and apologized for the trouble. When we told him about the boat and the light, he frowned. Sounds like poachers, he said. Sometimes people sneak onto the lake at night to fish without a permit. They'll scope out docks to see if anyone's watching. Just keep your doors locked and you'll be fine. Poachers. It sounded plausible, but it didn't explain the footprints or the missing key. After Mike left, we decided to set a trap. We tied a piece of fishing line across the steps leading up to the deck, low enough that someone wouldn't notice it in the dark. If anyone came up from the water, they'd trip and we'd hear it. We also moved the couch to block the sliding door, just in case. That night we sat in the dark again, waiting. The lake was quieter than usual, the air thick with humidity around 2 a.m. We heard the engine. It was unmistakable, now a low growl that seemed to vibrate through the cabin. My heart pounded as I gripped the bat. Jake, peering out the window, hissed, "I see it. It's right by the dock." I joined him, squinting into the gloom. A faint moonlit glow illuminated a small, dark boat, perhaps 15 feet long, bobbing silently, just beyond the dock. No lights, no movement. Then, a soft splash broke the silence, like someone stepping into the lake. My blood ran cold. Jake grabbed my arm, eyes wide. "The fishing line," he whispered. We strained to hear a snap, a footstep creak on the dock, but there was nothing, only silence, until the boat's engine hummed to life. We watched it glide away, vanishing into the darkness. We stayed up until dawn, but no one came the next morning. We packed our bags. We didn't care about the money or the rest of the week. Something was wrong with this place, and we weren't sticking around to find out what. As we loaded the car, I noticed something on the dock, a small wet pile of lake weeds, like someone had pulled them up and left them there. I didn't say anything to Jake. I just wanted to leave. We drove back to campus in silence, the lake fading into the distance. When we got home, I checked the Airbnb listing. It was gone. I tried texting Mike, but the number was disconnected. A week later, I saw a news article about Lake Worcester. A body had been found in the water, tangled in fishing nets. The police called it an accident. But I couldn't shake the image of that boat, that light, those footprints leading to our door. I don't know who was out there or what they wanted. Maybe it was poachers, like Mike said. Maybe it was something else. All I know is that I'll never go back to that lake, and I'll never rent a cabin again. I'm 14, and my name's Sophia. It was a Friday night in October, and my parents were out for their monthly date night. They'd left me alone at home before, so I wasn't worried. Our house is in a quiet, suburban neighborhood, the kind where everyone knows each other and nothing ever happens. At least that's what I thought. It was around 7:00 p.m., and the sky was already dark. I was sprawled on the couch, scrolling through my phone, watching dumb TikToks. The TV was on, playing some random Netflix show I wasn't really paying attention to. The house was quiet, except for the hum of the fridge and the occasional creak of the old wooden floors. My parents had left me a pizza in the oven, and I was waiting for it to cool down. They said they'd be back by 10, so I had the place to myself for a few hours. I was texting my friend Emma about some drama at school when I heard a noise outside. It was faint, like a twig snapping. Our backyard has this big oak tree, and sometimes squirrels or stray cats mess around out there. Initially, I dismissed the sound, but then it grew louder, a distinct heavy tread on the gravel path by the back door. My stomach lurched, yet I tried to rationalize it. I muted the TV, listening to the silence, then chuckled at my paranoia and turned the volume back up. Minutes later, heading to the kitchen for pizza, I noticed the back door's small window. The porch light, usually motion activated, was off. Strange. I assumed the bulb had died. But then I saw it, a shadow, tall and lanky, moving at the yard's edge, barely illuminated by the neighbor's house. It looked like a person, just standing there. My heart hammered. I froze, staring, waiting for movement. There was none. Maybe it's just a bush. I tried to convince myself, grabbing my pizza. I rushed back to the living room, locking the kitchen door behind me. I sat on the couch, pulling my knees up to my chest, and tried to focus on my phone, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. I kept glancing at the windows, expecting to see someone peeking in. The curtains were open, and the darkness outside felt like it was pressing against the glass. I got up and closed every curtain in the house, double-checking the front door lock. By 8:00 p.m., I was jumpy. Every little sound, the furnace kicking on the wind, rattling the shutters, made me flinch. I texted my mom asking when they'd be home, but she didn't reply. She's terrible at checking her phone when she's out. I tried to distract myself by watching a comedy show, but I kept pausing it to listen. That's when I heard the knock. It was soft at first, coming from the back door. 3 slow taps. My whole body went cold. I sat there gripping my phone, waiting to hear it again. Maybe it was a neighbor, but who knocks like that at night? I crept to the kitchen, keeping the lights off, so no one could see me through the window. I peeked through the little gap in the door's curtain. Nothing, just darkness. I was about to turn away when I heard it. Again, 3 slow knocks, but this time from the front door. I ran to the living room. My socks sliding on the hardwood. My heart was racing so fast, I could hear it in my ears. I grabbed the house phone and dialed 911, but didn't press call yet. I didn't want to look like an idiot if it was nothing. I tiptoed to the front window and peeked through a tiny slit in the curtains. A man was standing on the porch. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie and jeans. His face was shadowed, but I could tell he was looking right at the door. He raised his hand and knocked again, harder. This time, I ducked down, my hands shaking. I pressed call on the phone and whispered to the operator that someone was at my house and I was home alone. She told me to stay calm, lock myself in a room, and wait for the police. I grabbed a kitchen knife and ran to my parents' bedroom, locking the door and shoving a chair under the handle. I hid in the closet, clutching the knife and phone, trying not to cry. That's when I heard the back door rattle, like someone was trying the handle. Then a loud bang, like they kicked it. I whispered to the operator, begging her to hurry. She said the police were 5 minutes away. 5 minutes felt like forever. The banging stopped, and I heard footsteps crunching outside, circling the house. I could see his shadow pass by the bedroom window, slow and deliberate, like he was looking for a way in. I don't know how long I sat there, curled up in the dark, listening to every sound. Finally I heard sirens. The footsteps stopped, and I saw blue and red lights flashing through the window. The police searched the yard and found footprints in the dirt by the back door, but the man was gone. They stayed until my parents got home, and I've never been so happy to see them. The police never caught the guy. They said it was probably someone looking for an easy break-in, but I still can't sleep without checking the locks 1,000,000 times. Every creak in the house makes me think he's back. I don't know what he wanted, but I'll never forget the way his shadow moved, like he knew I was watching. In May 1994, my girlfriend Bunny and I decided we needed a break from our busy jobs in Nashville. We drove down to Seville, Tennessee, after finding a weekend farmhouse rental in the classified section of the Tennessee newspaper. The small ad was simple: quiet, 2-bedroom farmhouse, mountain view. Call Mr. Duran. When I phoned the number, an older man answered, said the place had belonged to his parents, and told me the key would be waiting under a chipped blue flower pot on the porch. 2 nights for $80 felt like a bargain, so we mailed him a check and packed our bags. The drive on us Route 4-111 was peaceful, all rolling pasture and barns painted with old Sea Rock City slogans. A gravel lane led us past a leaning mailbox that still carried the name Doreen in faded black letters. The white farmhouse sat by itself on a gentle rise backed by thick woods of pine and poplar. The air smelled of wet soil and wild flowers. After a light spring rain, inside the house looked frozen in another decade. Quilts with patchwork stars covered sagging couches. A pendulum clocked softly on the living room wall. While carrying our bags down a narrow hallway, Bunny stopped and pointed one plain wooden door. Halfway down was shut, tight and secured on the hallway side by a heavy iron deadbolt. Deep gouges scarred the frame around the latch, as though someone had wrestled with it more than once. Every other door had only cheap brass knobs that turned freely. I shrugged and joked that it must be where Mr. Dorn stored extra hay or old tools. Bunny didn't laugh. The deadbolt felt out of place in a gentle family home, but I tried to put it out of my mind. We made sandwiches, listened to a country station on a crackling radio, and set a plan to hike in the Smokies. The next morning, by 10 o'clock, the sky outside was black, and a steady rain had started again. We turned off the lamps, crawled under a homemade quilt in the front bedroom, and let the ticking clock lull us towards sleep. Not long after midnight, a dull thud woke me. At first I thought wind had slammed an unlatched shutter, yet the sound had come from inside the house somewhere down the hall. While I strained my ears in the dark, a slow dragging noise followed. It reminded me of a heavy trunk scraping across wood. The sound lasted only a few seconds before everything went silent, except the rain tapping on the metal roof. Bunny whispered that she'd heard it too. I told her it was probably the storm working on the old timbers, though the explanation felt thin, even as it left my mouth. Morning light made the worry seem silly. We brewed weak coffee on the electric stove, ate toast, and drove to the Laurel Falls trailhead. Dozens of families were out, and the voices of children echoed along the river, washing away the memory of the night. We spent the afternoon in Pigeon Forge, brought a small jar of sourwood honey, and talked about how we might move to the country someday. The sky started to dim as we wound back up the gravel lane. Fireflies blinked in the pasture, and the farmhouse lights burning in the windows looked welcoming. We watched a rented VHS tape on a portable player Bunny had borrowed from her brother. The rain returned harder than before, hammering the tin roof until it sounded like applause. Around 11, I clicked off the lamp. 5 heartbeats later, the same thud shook the hallway wall. Only this time, it was louder, close enough to rattle a framed photograph of 2 unfamiliar children on the dresser. Bunny gripped my arm. The dragging sound returned. Longer this time, like something heavy being pulled a few feet before settling. I reached into the closet and retrieved a dusty aluminum softball bat, likely left by a previous occupant. We waited, our breathing shallow, but no footsteps followed. After several minutes, I flicked on the light and cautiously eased the door open. The corridor stretched empty towards the living room. The locked door remained as before, its bolt gleaming in the dim glow of a floor lamp we had left on. My skin prickled when I noticed fresh scratches in the wood, bright and pale against the older, dark gouges. Bunny wanted to leave immediately, but driving the unfamiliar back roads in a thunderstorm seemed like a worse option. We pushed the dresser in front of our door, left the lamp blazing, and lay awake listening. Around 2 in the morning, the thud came again, softer this time, as if whatever was behind it was tiring. No drag followed. Eventually, exhaustion overtook me, and I dozed until the first rays of dawn slipped through the curtains. I tried calling Mr. Doran from the kitchen phone. A mechanical voice told me the number had been disconnected. When I stepped onto the porch for fresh air, I noticed faint scuff marks on the paint beneath an upstairs window, marks that hadn't been there the day before. It looked as though someone had climbed in or out. Bunny and I needed no more convincing. We threw our bags into the back seat of my Chevy Lumina, not even bothering to fold the quilts, and started the engine back in Seaville. We stopped at a diner for breakfast and told a tired waitress the short version. She frowned when I mentioned the Doran name, then said an old man by that name had died 2 summers earlier. His children lived in Knoxville and no longer used the farm. On the way home, we detoured to the E.R. County Sheriff's Office and filed a report. The deputy on duty listened without rolling his eyes, wrote everything down, and said he'd send someone to take a look weeks past. I phoned the sheriff's office twice and was told they found the farmhouse empty. No signs of forced entry except those scratches on the doorframe. The deputy suggested raccoons might have slipped through a hole in the eaves and been moving lumber around the locked room. I had grown up around raccoons. They didn't thud like a grown man dropping a trunk. When I asked whether the deadbolt had been opened, the deputy mumbled that the door was still sealed, and whatever was inside was nothing worth recording. Bunny and I never went back to pick up the deposit we had been promised.
I live alone in a small brick house on Oak Ridge Lane, a quiet street where nothing exciting ever seems to happen. Across from me sits a two-story place with faded green shutters. The owner, Mr. Dalton, moved overseas for work 4 months ago, and the house has been empty since. A real estate sign still leans against the mailbox.
Because I work late hours, I'm often awake when most of the neighborhood is asleep. So I notice little things other people miss. One Tuesday night, while scrolling on my phone in the living room recliner, I saw a light flicker through Mr. Dalton's second-floor window. It was 2:00 a.m. Exactly. The glow was weak, like an old bulb trying to stay alive. It blinked on and off 3 or 4 times, then cut out. I shrugged, thinking maybe the timer on a lamp had been left plugged in the next night. The same thing happened. Same window, same time, same shaky glow that felt odd. Timers don't usually work so precisely. 2 nights in a row, after months of sitting idle, I walked to my front window, pushed the blinds aside, and stared. After a few seconds, the light stopped and the house went dark again. No movement. I told myself, wiring can act strange in an empty house, and went to bed. By Friday, the flicker had shown up 3 more times, always right at 2 over an a.m., never lasting more than 30 seconds. Curiosity started to gnaw. My job at the hardware store teaches me a bit about electrical work, and faulty circuits rarely keep an exact schedule. I considered calling the property company, but worried I'd sound like a bored night owl making a fuss. Early Saturday morning, I made coffee at 1:50 a.m. and took a seat by my upstairs bedroom window, determined to watch the entire event. At 2 on the dot, the bulb flared to life, sputtering like a candle in the wind. I leaned forward, eyes fixed on the window across the street. Then just as suddenly the light died for 3 heartbeats. Nothing happened on the 4th. A tall shadow slid into view behind the glass. It didn't move. It simply stood there, shoulders squared, facing me. Even from that distance, I felt its attention like heat on my face. My mouth went dry. I ducked below the window ledge, pulse pounding in my ears. 100 questions fought for space in my head. Squatter, vandals worse. I grabbed my phone and called my older brother, but the call rang out. When I dared to peek again, the window across the street was empty, dark as before. At dawn, I drove to the corner coffee shop, still rattled. I asked the barista who lives a block over if anyone had rented the Dalton place. She looked surprised and told me the owner had taken the house off the market 2 months ago because of a plumbing leak. No tenant had moved in. The agent's number was taped to the front door for emergencies only. I used that number. The agent answered, listened to my story, and promised to send a patrol car to check the property. That evening, an officer knocked on my door. He said they'd walk through the house. Every door was locked. Dust, thick on the floors. No footprints, no sign of recent entry. He added that the power was still on because winter was coming, and the owner was running the furnace at low heat to stop pipes from freezing, probably a loose connection. He said, knowing police had inspected should have calmed me, yet the image of that unmoving silhouette would not leave my mind. So I set up an old smartphone on a tripod behind my bedroom window, pointed straight at the Dalton house, and hit record. If the light came on again, I'd have proof. Sunday night, 9:55 a.m. I sat beside the camera, notebook in hand. The street was silent. No cars, no wind, only the soft hum of my refrigerator. Downstairs, the digital clock flipped to 2 instantly. The upstairs window opposite me glowed. The flicker lasted longer. This time, almost a full minute through my lens. I saw the shadow appear clearer than before. Tall, lanky, head tilted slightly to the left, as if studying me. Then something new happened. The shape raised one arm and seemed to wave. I flinched so hard. My chair scraped the wooden floor at that exact moment. Every light in my own house went out. The camera screen went black. I was left sitting in perfect darkness, with only the faint street lamp outside. I reached for my phone, hands shaking, and called 911. Police arrived within 5 minutes. 2 officers swept my house first. No intruder, no sign of tampering at the breaker box. Then they crossed to the Dalton property. I watched from my porch while their flashlights danced through rooms. After 20 minutes they returned. One officer said they'd found the upstairs hallway. Light fixture hanging loose by its wires, bulb shattered on the floor beneath it. Dust covered everything except a fresh scuff on the windowsill facing my house. No footprints again. Yet someone or something had touched that sill recently enough to leave a clean smear. The property agent changed the locks and shut off power to the house. The next day, that night, I slept at my brother's place across town. We set up a live stream from my spare laptop, aimed at the Dalton window, wanting to prove nothing else would happen once the electricity was cut. At 1:59 a.m., the laptop showed only darkness. We waited silent. When 2 arrived, the screen flashed white for a heartbeat, like a camera flash reflecting off glass. No steady glow, just that single burst. And in it we both saw the outline of a face close to the window, eyes level with the lens before everything went black again. My brother slammed the laptop shut and said he was driving me back to his apartment for the week. 2 days later, an electrician inspected the Dalton place with the agent and a police officer. The main breaker was off, every wire cold. The shattered bulb lay where the officers had left it, but no new glass, no footprints, no sign anyone had entered. Since the locks were changed, I asked if the electrician could explain the final flash. He shook his head and told me the fixture wasn't even connected anymore. I sold my house a month afterward and moved in with a roommate downtown. This happened in the fall of 2013. When I was 27 and living in rural Ohio, I was working as a delivery driver for a small auto parts company, running supplies to mechanic shops across the state. Most of my routes were during the day, but sometimes I'd get stuck with a late night delivery. That's when this nightmare happened, and I still get chills thinking about it. It was late October, around 10 p.m., and I was driving my company van, a beat-up Ford Transit, down State Route 33, a lonely 2-lane road cutting through fields and patches of woods. I just dropped off a Creative brake pads at a shop in Logan and was heading back to Columbus, about an hour away. The road was empty, no streetlights, just my headlights slicing through the dark. The radio was off because the van's speakers were shot, so it was just me, the hum of the engine, and the occasional rustle of leaves blowing across the road. About 20 minutes into the drive, I noticed something weird. My headlights caught a shape on the side of the road, maybe a quarter mile ahead. Initially, I mistook it for a common deer in the area, but upon closer inspection, it appeared to be a person. They stood motionless, facing away from the road, tall and dressed in dark jacket and pants, simply standing in the grass. I slowed down, considering they might need assistance. Flat tires, or breakdowns weren't uncommon on this stretch. I lowered my window and called out, "Hey, you okay?" There was no response. The figure didn't even turn. Assuming they hadn't heard me, I continued driving, glancing in my rearview mirror. The figure was gone, as if they had vanished into the trees. It unnerved me, but I dismissed it as likely a hunter or someone walking home. A few miles further, things grew stranger. My van's dashboard clock began malfunctioning, flickering between 10:47 p.m. and arbitrary numbers like 3:12 or 7:56. I tapped it, suspecting a loose wire, but it persisted. Then the van's engine briefly sputtered, as if choking. I cursed under my breath, hoping to avoid getting stranded. The road was dead quiet. No other cars, no houses, just fields and darkness. That's when I heard it. A low rhythmic thumping, like someone tapping on the back of the van. I froze my hands tight on the wheel. I checked the side mirrors, but there was nothing behind me. The thumping stopped, then started again, louder, like knuckles rapping on metal. I pulled over my heart, racing, and grabbed the flashlight from the glove box. I stepped out, shining the light around the van. Nothing, no dents, no scratches, no sign of anyone. I got back in, locked the doors, and floored it. 10 minutes later, I saw it again, the same figure, standing on the right side of the road, facing away. Same dark jacket, same spot in the grass, same unnatural stillness. My stomach dropped. There was no way someone could have gotten this far ahead on foot. I didn't stop this time. I sped past, my eyes glued to the rearview mirror. The figure didn't move, but I swear it turned its head as I passed, like it was watching me. I couldn't see a face, just a shadow under a hood. My hands were shaking, but I kept driving, telling myself I was tired, imagining things. Then the radio turned on, not music, just static, loud and crackling, like someone was twisting the dial through empty frequencies. I hit the power button, but it wouldn't shut off. Through the static I heard something else, a voice faint and garbled, like it was coming from far away. It sounded like a man whispering, "Stop, turn back," over and over. I slammed the dashboard, yelling at it to shut up, but the voice kept going, getting louder, more desperate. I yanked the radio's power cord from the dash, and it finally stopped. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my throat. I was almost to the highway when I saw the figure again, this time in the middle of the road. It was standing under a flickering streetlight facing me. I slammed on the brakes, the van screeching to a stop. The figure didn't move. It was tall, too tall, its arms hanging limp, its face hidden in shadow. I honked, shouted, but it just stood there. Then slowly it raised one arm, pointing straight at me. I threw the van into reverse, my tires spinning as I backed up. When I looked again, the figure was gone. No trace, no sound, just the empty road. I didn't stop driving until I hit a 24-hour gas station near the highway. I sat in the parking lot, lights on, doors locked until the sun came up. I told my boss I was sick and took a week off. When I went back, I refused night roads. I never saw the figure again, but I couldn't shake the feeling it was still out there waiting. I quit the job a few months later and moved to Dayton, far from Route 3. Even now, I avoid driving alone at night. Sometimes when I'm falling asleep, I hear that static, that voice telling me to turn back. I don't know what was on that road, but it wasn't human, and I'm not going back to find out. I'll never forget the time when I almost lost my life. In 2022, it was in the month of September, and I lived in Onalaska, Wisconsin. I was also a sophomore in high school. I met this 17-year-old man named Austin at my summer job. He used to go to the same high school as me, but he got expelled for plagiarism. He would pick me up and drop me off at home every day of the summer when we had work, because I didn't have a driver's license at the time. I also want to point out that it was pretty obvious that he had a crush on me, because he would hug me every day, but I made it look like he didn't know that I knew that he liked me, and it worked. I didn't feel the same way as he did. We were now into like the second or third week of school, and I was still settling in because I still had summer blues. It was the end of the night, and Austin was driving home from a party that a kid from school through Austin just pulled up at my house to drop me off before I could step out of the vehicle. Austin hesitantly asked me if I wanted to go out with him. I laughed and told him that I was okay, and I just wanted to be friends. He then said, "All right," with a frown on his face. We then waved and said bye to each other. I then went inside my house, took off my shoes, changed into my pajamas, brushed my teeth, and was ready to go to bed. Before I could even go to bed, I got a text from a friend. I unlocked my phone, and what I read on my screen will forever haunt me in my dreams. It was a long paragraph about how Austin had been secretly taking photos of me while I was sleeping in my bed through my window. I would sometimes let the shades to my window open because no moonlight or streetlights ever came through the window. I also saw the photos of me sleeping. The reason my friend found out is that Austin bragged to her about this through text. He also had a photo album of it that was labeled "The Love of My Life" right there. And then I felt like a needle was going through my heart, realizing his obsession with me. I sent him a text in all caps telling him to never contact me again. He then said he was sorry for playing the victim card. I felt like screaming after reading his text. I sent him another text saying that he needed to lose my number. And next thing you know, I blocked him. I wasn't feeling tired now, so I went to take some melatonin and Benadryl so I could fall asleep quicker. And it worked, but not for long. I don't know what time it was, but I woke up to the sound of my window shattering. I couldn't react quickly, and right in front of me, there he was, Austin. Before I could see what was in his hand, I felt my face being stabbed with a knife. I started to cry and scream, and about 5 seconds later, I heard my dad scream out in the hallway, "What the hell is going on?" And that's when Austin managed to escape through the broken window. Next, my father came storming into my room, and he had a look of terror on his face. He was feeling a mixture of sadness and anger, and he started hugging me, asking if I was all right and what had just happened. I was honest with him and told him that I wasn't fine or safe, and that boy Austin broke through my window and started attacking me with a knife. Now my father's emotion turned to 100% anger, and he ran out of the house, chasing down Austin, but he was unable to find him. I called the police, told them my story, and they said they'll be there. They arrived 10 minutes later, along with medics. I was now feeling very dizzy with blood all over my face. My father gave me some water and a towel to wrap around my body.
I was able to tell them my side of the story, and I was then taken to the hospital in the ambulance while the police tried to locate where Austin was. I was treated for my stab wounds, and I stayed overnight at the hospital and was able to go home the next day. It took the cops a little while to find him,
But they eventually found him. I was given information that when Austin was at the hospital, he stated that he was going to prison for a long time, admitted that he didn't know why he did it, and expressed that he loved me. As a result, Austin was charged with felony counts of attempted first-degree intentional homicide, armed burglary, and was subsequently given a cash bond of $50,000. A year later, he was guilty of the first charge, but the second charge was dismissed, but read in Ultimately, Austin was sentenced to 16 years in Wisconsin State Prison and 4 years of extended supervision, although justice has been served. I still get very skittish whenever I meet another man, because I'm afraid of what his real intentions are. I know I sound crazy, but I still have a lot of PTSD from it. I wish nothing but pity on Austin, and I hope he goes to hell when he dies.